Then move over.
Oh, second one.
Okay.
The next speakers are Jeremy Rasmussen and Paolo, who will be leading the session on deconstructing 100% JavaScript-based ransomware. Jeremy is an adjunct professor at the University of South Florida and founder of the USF White Hatters Computer Security Club, WCSC. His team also performs network vulnerability audits and forensic incident response, amongst other things. Paolo is a senior cybersecurity engineer at Abacode. He earned a BS in computer science from UC Berkeley and specializes in the field of mobile security, specifically the Android and iOS platforms. He is a past speaker at Black Hat Europe. Let's hear it for our speakers.
So first of all, some shout outs to my peeps. This is a crew. We got together, this is our White Hatters reunion that we had in Vegas. Is this too, like the story? At DEF CON, last year we had over 35 people at the Opera House, so good times, and I see a lot of you folks in the audience. Shout outs for this talk go to James and HT and Vic Halper, two malware researchers, also K Security, which is another guy in Hawaii who's doing some reverse engineering of some of the ransomware, who we actually saw some of this stuff coming through our Security Operations Center. So we put an appliance on people's network and watch everything that's going on, and then new and unique stuff we will reverse engineer in the lab or do some malware analysis. And then you can go and research that on other places of other stuff that people have said about various types of new malware. So all the other people there, DEF CON, 813 group here, SC Squared, USF, White Hatters, and Infraguard. Thanks to everybody for helping out, and thanks for coming. All right, so quick history of ransomware. Everybody knows what ransomware is, right? Essentially, you get some malicious software in your system, and it encrypts all your files, and then they want money to decrypt them, right? Well, the first person who thought of this genius idea was this Dr. Joseph Pop back in 28 years ago at the World AIDS Conference. And he sent out 20,000 floppy disks to people, and it was like a corrupted autoexec.bat file, Trojanized, and after you booted your system or rebooted 90 times, on the 90th time, it would encrypt all your files. And you'll get a warning there saying you need to send about $190 to an unmarked PO box in Panama. So how effective that was. He was kind of crazy. He said he was trying to raise money for AIDS research. So that one was kind of easily dealt with because it used a symmetric encryption key. So once people figured out, oh, okay, kind of a single key to decrypt everything, then he wasn't getting any more, ransoms paid. Well, about 17 years later, we saw the next one come out, which was Archivist or Archivius, whatever it was, 2006, which actually used RSA encryption. So it was using public key, and each individual instance was an individually encrypted instance, and so you couldn't use like one key to decrypt everything. Fast forward to 2 or 3 years ago, we saw CryptoLocker, which is actually using AES 256-bit encryption and a 2048-bit RSA key. One of the things that really made this thing spread was the Zeus Trojan.
They use the existing CNC for the Zeus Trojan, which is the banking Trojan that is totally widespread. And they just basically realized that why reinvent the wheel? Let's just go ahead and use their command and control.
So they piggybacked on the Zeus botnet. But there was, you may have read about this, Operation Tobar was a law enforcement effort to basically take over the peer-to-peer command and control structure of Zeus. botnet and take it down. So once that happened, the encrypted locker kind of fell out of favor. CBT locker is one that came out in 2014. I thought this was kind of an interesting one because they communicated directly with the command and control server over Tor, and versus having multi-tiered infrastructure that's made up of proxies and botnets and multiple Bitcoin wallets and everything. So this is really like the first one that had, great centralized customer service for paying your Bitcoins, right? This is an important thing to these people. They want to make sure that they have good customer service, because if the word gets out that you don't ever give them the key when you pay up, people will stop paying ransom. So
we leverage the convenience factor. As long as it's more convenient for you to just shell out the Bitcoin and go on with life, that's what we really get flustered
I just wanted to say that they shout out they leverage the convenience factor, so that as long as they keep the customers paying and you don't have to think about it, that's way better for them than if you actually have to fight them.
And then, so another thing we saw with CBT lockers is started deleting the shadow backup, shadow volume copy on your Windows, which makes it harder to recover. They also had a variant called Simple Locker, which actually went after Android devices and encrypted those. Locky was one. Some people put some ransomware source code up on GitHub as a proof of concept, to help the community get better at dealing with ransomware. Unfortunately, people just took it and really ran with it and modified it and made it even better than the open source version that was up there. And so Locky appears to be kind of a variant of something that somebody put on GitHub and then made better. What they did a lot is they started targeting hospitals and healthcare industry. They found out that people in that industry were willing to pay the ransoms because you got these very valuable customer records, patient records. My experience though with hospitals and doctors are pretty cheap. So maybe you got to find out what really sticks in their craw. The issue is, you have to have a modified Locky that that brings a binary in from somewhere else. I'm going to show you how it worked and how they actually went from a Word macro into a JavaScript version of that. Now, beyond this year and beyond, what are we seeing now? We're seeing like doxware. That really is a thing now, where people will say, they'll come in and they'll infect your files. If you have good backups or whatever, you can recover from that. You may not pay the ransom, but what if they put all your files out there, like just automatically, if you don't pay the Bitcoin within 3 days? Then you might start worrying about that, right? What's the bad PR stemming from that? There's also like a ransomware accomplice schemes now where they'll keep you from having to pay the ransom if you go ahead and infect, you're part of a peer-to-peer system that infects other people. So
it's like Amway, basically now.
So as we mentioned, back in 2015, most everything was being done through attachments or scripts, macros in MS Word files or Office documents. Macro can really doesn't operate really out of. If you enable macros in the document, then it doesn't sandbox anything it does. So it can open files, call ActiveX control, and so forth. The key thing is getting somebody to click on enabling macros. So there's some certain social engineering tricks to that. Like one is you can say, you've got to enable your macro if you want to see, this document obviously has the wrong encoding. So click on the macro to enable the correct decoding of the document so you can read it. That'd be hard to get somebody to click on that one probably. I've seen another one that says, this document is insecure unless you enable macros. Then it will be secure. So it's like obviously the opposite. So it's hard to get people to click on that. So what's a better idea? How about just JavaScript attachment?
Skip the macros completely, because pretty much at this point everyone knows not to enable them.
So an unsavvy user is going to get a JavaScript attachment like receipt.pdf.js, and Windows file system by default doesn't show any extensions, so it's going to look like receipt.pdf. You can even change the icon to make it look like PDF icon, and you can click on that. Although I would say, the psychology of the JavaScript scroll of parchment itself, it kind of makes people think of a document rather than a script or something that's dangerous and executable. So a lot of those like early variants of Locky were just droppers where they would connect out to. So let's see.
You have two microphones on there?
What's that?
So 2 microphones?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's got one and I've got one.
Remember, careful where you stand.
Okay. So this poor guy clicks on something. He opens an attachment. The attachment typically goes out to command and control server, downloads the portable executable, and then executes it. Well, that's still easy, you know, for a lot of antiviruses to pick up. Let me explain something real quick. Why this new type of ransomware is harder to pick up by antivirus. Everybody understands the difference between compiled and interpreted. If you don't, I'll tell you right now. When we're reverse engineering a piece of malware, usually we're going to use our portable executable or PE analyzer tools in a sandbox. We're going to watch, you know, what file respond, what kind of connections does it make, how does it change the registry, what kind of processes or tasks get spawned, things like that. And we'll diff like the known good view versus the tainted view, right? Well, you can use some tools that that will make it easy to traverse those binaries or reverse them, like Binary Ninja or IDA Pro, to do that. But that doesn't work as well with something that's an interpreted language. So in the case of the interpreted language, so the regular language, you write the program, compile it, distribute it, and then they run it. Interpreted, you write a script, write once, run anywhere, right? You distribute it, then the interpreter on the system runs the script, and then it executes each line by line. That's how an interpreted program works. So your binary reverse engineering tools are not going to give you really much help there. You really need some way to deobfuscate or detangle the script code itself. There are some tools out there. I'm going to show you a couple of them. And then the other thing about this is that potentially, because it's written in JavaScript, which can run on multiple platforms, you could actually add in, some triggers or features to detect what kind of operating system you're on and execute different things for whatever operating system you're on. You can write it really once and it would be portable.
So you can have it, so this example I can show you is for Windows, but you can definitely have it, modify it on the fly for sort of a polymorphic sort of attack where you can change it to run on Node.js. You can basically have it to do more than just one type of operating system.
We haven't seen that yet, but I can see an Mac version of this coming out or Linux.
Yeah, Node.js is pretty popular. Also, if you try to use any sort of code signing to identify which pieces of binaries are okay to run on your system, well, your interpreter is going to be okay to run. It's already been code signed, so it doesn't help you with that one.
Right, I'm going to explain that a little bit right here. So on Windows, JavaScript outside your browser. So I'm not talking about stuff in your browser. The browser itself has a sandbox. It's hopefully going to try to keep, malicious code from creating files, making network connections, and things like that. But outside the browser, pretty much everything you're downloading off the App Store now is HTML5 or JavaScript, right? So it has to be able to execute on your Windows system. And Windows Script Host is the interpreter which Windows uses to run scripts outside the browser. Well, the issue about that is it doesn't sandbox anything, which means it lets you do whatever you want. You can create connections, drop files, even run ActiveX controls. And there will be nothing that any antivirus will pick up on that because antivirus considers Windows Script Host to be a trusted application.
It's also been around since, I think, Windows 2000. So it's guaranteed to be on any system that you're targeting.
All right, so just to show you what I'm talking about here. I didn't know I had to do that. It's a drag. All right, so just a simple example. Hello world in Windows script language, right? Pretty easy. You just open a text file, you write some code, and automatically it will execute, no questions asked. Hello world, and beautiful. Here's my first script. Well, can I execute any application? Let's just try to write a script that will run calculator program and see if it gets faithfully executed on Windows. I bet it will. Look at that. So the point is, Windows script host scripts will run any executable and no questions asked, including this one that I'm going to show you in a minute.
This is a 2008 server, I think R2.
Yep. Oh, so just to be clear, right, we're really talking about JavaScript on Windows rather than JavaScript. But,
yeah, this is basically JavaScript. It's not JavaScript like you use for the web, but I mean it's a superset of that. Basically, Microsoft decided to go add some extensions to Ecmona, and so they have this JavaScript interpreter that's in every single Windows system, and it's still there. They won't remove it anytime soon. But basically, yeah, it's both derived from ECMAScript, and it can access COM objects from the Windows interface, so you can basically use it like almost like VB in a sense, to just grab the core of the object and do things with the object, manipulate things. There's no sandboxing. You can write to the drive, you can change the files, you can delete files. This is not the thing that's inside, let's say, IE or Chrome.
So,
well, there's ActiveX too.
Yeah, COM objects or ActiveX objects are basically reusable pieces of code that are Windows. They have a standard interface to them so that you can, like, so not everybody has to write their own spell checker. You can have like one spell checker that everybody just interfaces with. So any type of object like that you can interface with and run. So it makes obfuscation easier and it makes detection more difficult. All right, so why isn't it being spotted by antivirus or endpoint protection? Like we said, Windows Script Host is a trusted application, so it doesn't get blocked. Obfuscation is easy. You would just write string from pair code, and this is the example I have here is string from pair code 34 represents a double quote character to include a quote mark inside the string that itself is enclosed in double quotes. All right, so all that code looks, messy, but once you beautify it, it's just regular code. So that's not really a security thing, right? People obfuscate their code. Anybody who writes JavaScript obfuscates it so it can be reversed, to protect their intellectual property.
Yeah, basically this thing acts as its own unpacker. So if you look at it, it looks really like gobbledygook. It's formatted to look almost like a binary. And then if you go all the way to the bottom, you'll see the unpacking function. And then it'll rewrite itself, essentially. All right.
I'm actually going to run it. Well, then I'm just going to open it first. Then I'm going to run it. It's big. It's like 600K. We'll talk about that in a minute, why that is. Basically, they've included all the libraries in line in the code.
Yeah, see?
That's just the beginning. It's still right there. We go. This is what it really looks like. And you guys can actually code and some other blobs of obfuscated stuff. And come all the way down to the bottom and you see some very incriminating things like my documents, base64 encoder, and crypto.js encoder, and then dropping pony malware and some other things. So it actually has actually drops an executable that runs. It puts a 64-bit wrapper around 32-bit object calls and stuff too.
For backwards compatibility.
All right, so this is actually the process of making heads or tails out of this code. The original is just this long blob of stuff that's all concatenated together. In this case, this is a blocky.js piece of code, and if you run JavaScript echo and split reverse join, it comes out as the actual code. Then you go through there and you find out they've got gobs and gobs of nonsense functions that don't do anything. They return exactly what you send to them. Why is that? Well, they're trying to be a pain in the butt, right? They're trying to cover the tracks. A couple of reasons for this. So it will take me 3 or 4 days to go through the code instead of 3 or 4 hours, right? Okay, so I'm running down rabbit holes trying to figure out what this function does, and it turns out the function does absolutely nothing. So they're trying to hide their tracks. The other thing is they're polymorphism. They're trying to change. They'll probably change the look of this malware every time they infect, right? So nobody can ever compete on it. It's always going to look different, have different functions, different signature every single time. All right, so beautified is down this corner, and we see that it's actually making an AJAX call it's an AJAX method to connect out to a command and control site on the internet and download a payload. So we can deobfuscate that URL. We find out it's going to heavensgate.org. Well, here's a little tool for you. That guy I mentioned at the beginning, Kahuna Security or Kahoo Security, has a URL revealer. You can get it off of this tools page, although I would warn you that Google does flag that as dangerous. Sure, that means so use it at your own risk. Kahoo found out that different variants of this Locky.js malware were using AJAX, HTTP, bits, admin, and PowerShell to pull stuff down off of command control sites. A URL revealer should be able to detect and block any of those request methods and deobfuscate them. All right, so that was Locky.js. The one I'm actually running in my virtual machine right now is RAA. This is the one that the two Hungarian researchers found. I assume they're Hungarian because they're asking for forints. Anybody know what forints are? Hungarian currency, right? That sounds like a 32-bit long word, a foreign. I don't know. But anyways, come on, that's fun. Now when you bring this, when you execute this script, everything's self-contained, right? So now it doesn't even have to go out to command and control site and download anything. It doesn't have to connect to any libraries. It has everything in line. That's why it's gone up from about 25K script to about a 600K script. So looking at this one, seeing what it does, I'm going to go ahead and execute it now. Cross your fingers while I demo. It never works, but we'll see. There we go. Boom. Oh, wow. It popped up a Russian encoded WordPad file. And then if I go over here to my documents directory, I'll see that, there's a README. It came up in Russian, and if I sat here for a while, I'd probably see, I see if there's a key that it dropped, public key, and then there's I guess some other script. So this is the executed script code, and it also drops a DLL for the 64-bit wrapper for the 32-bit system calls. All right, so and then if we sat here for a while, we would see it start to encrypt files, and it would say dot encrypted at the end of them.
Once again, it did not need to download anything from the internet to do that. It's got all the libraries it needs to do that in there because it's using Code.js, basically.
Yep. Here's what it does. It goes and starts looking for files with .doc, XLS, RTF, and it encrypts all those. It will skip the Windows path, recycle program files, and all that. Why does it skip those? Yeah, they don't want to render the system operable, so you can still get online and go give them your Bitcoin. So it's just looking out at your files and your documents folder for the most part. It asks for 0.39 Bitcoin, which is about $250. All right, as Paolo just mentioned, this is probably one of the key parts about this, is that they have now made use of this open source library, Crypto.js, which is up on Google Code Archive, it's also on GitHub. You can see the call right there. It would actually call it in code. So by default, JavaScript doesn't have any advanced crypto functions built into it. And it used to be that people had to call out to library. They had to either get library calls, either common object or to some external source to get the encryption executable. And the point is now, the reason why this is getting to be so widespread is they brought the library right inside the code in line. Some nasty other thing it does, it deletes your Windows shadow copy. So there's a service running on Windows called BSS, called Volume Snapshot Service, which is always making like your system restore points. So you can go back, like if you ever have a blue screen of death, you can always go back to an earlier good known configuration and recover. RAA stops the shadow service and then deletes the actual registry key, so it can never start again. Isn't that garbage? I hate that. It's really mean. Here it is. So if I bring up running processes, and go down to BSS, I say stop. I'm like, okay, well, let's restart that sucker. Nope. Can't find the path specified. So it deleted my whole shadow backup system. All right, so here's the actual ransom demand. RAA is written in Russian, so it creates it's kind of, you know how there's Spanglish, there's this kind of Rushlish, I don't know what it is. But there's some stuff in English, like a README with some identifier unique to the system that gets dropped in your documents folder, and it tells you need to contact an email address and then send some money. It actually also installs a password stealing Trojan called Pony. But here's the Russian. If somebody went to the trouble of translating that, this is what it really says. It's like everything's been encrypted. Here's how you send something to our Bitcoin wallet. And by the way, I love number 5. Take measures to prevent similar situations in the future. Like, not only do they pwn you, but they rub it in. Like, they're like, yes.
And then they put it in place that they can pwn you later, which is the whole secondary thing. They're starting to be mean now, which is when they drop the pony executable on there.
Remember I love you virus? Did anybody remember that? Okay, that would infect you one time and then set like a registry flag, and it would send itself out to like the first 50 people in your email list, and that would be it. Never again. These are just, they're not just satisfied the first time. They want to have advanced persistent.
It's like persist on your network.
Oh, and no presentations complete without my little pony. Yeah, so there's a base 64 like blob of code in the file, which turns out when it decodes, it turns out to be ski.exe and then executes it. That is a password stealer that's pretty sophisticated. They've gone into like 110 different applications. There's actually like exploit kits where you can get a hold of this pony password stealer, but they reverse engineer like 110 applications, email clients, web browsers, and everything. Anywhere where stuff is stored, a password is stored encrypted, they reverse it and get the plain text password and then send it out as part of a botnet, which your system becomes part of a botnet to affect other systems. All right, what can we do about this? This sounds pretty awful, right? Obviously, backups early and often. But I don't know if you can tell that picture. That customer is not here. We actually did a test, and we did a physical penetration test of the key computing facilities, and in a server room co-located right next to the primary servers were all the backup tapes. So what good does that do, right? Fire comes through, it's wiping up, it's going to wipe out everything. Also, that was the one where I was able to use the credit card to shim the lock on the server.
Also, I don't think they were backing up like any sort of timely thing. I think they were backing up less than a 1%.
Yeah. So this is the point. We've seen there's like sleeper or dormant types of ransomware now that will stay silent for like 6 months and then come to life later on. So if your backups only go back 2 or 3 months, you're going to be SOL when you try to recover. So that's the whole Schrodinger's backup theorem. The condition of any backup is unknown until a restore is attempted. So not only should you have backups, but you should try to restore them and test them often. Oh, I also mentioned encryption error. So a few years back, TRICARE, which is like military healthcare insurance, They had a backup tape stolen out of an SAIC employee's car. There were 4.9 million records, and I think it was turned out to be a $4.9 billion lawsuit for that. So that's a kind of substantial amount of liability. I think that thing eventually got thrown out though because they couldn't prove that they had done anything with the tapes. The guy's radio was also stolen, but
There's no active use of the data on there, so it got thrown out. But the data is still
out there somewhere, right? As soon as the person figures out what it is and buys the backup tape equipment to restore it, then you got 4.9 million identities stolen. All right, so this is one, you might want to think twice about this. This is kind of the draconian measure would be set a Windows registry fee to disable Windows script host. But then I'm guessing you're probably going to break everything that you download out the App Store that runs with HTML5 and JavaScript.
right. So Windows applications now in the App Store, one of the key components is HTML5 and JavaScript. So if you go ahead and turn this off, it might cause some problems.
Try turning off cookies in your browser. It works, but it's also going to be painfully, click every 5 minutes. So you're going to get this little pop-up that says Windows script host access is disabled in machine contact your administrator. I mean, there's some basic stuff, like you can always open JavaScript files with Notepad, right? Don't execute them, right? That might keep unsavvy users from clicking on bad attachments. How about just enable file extensions in Windows Explorer rather? In Windows 8, just open a folder, click the View tab, and click on file extensions, and they'll show up. Although my wife wouldn't know what file extensions are, probably. What else? Come on, stretching here. We got to come up with something. Well, I mean, in our case, we watch everything that's going on. So SIEM is a security information event management solution. It's both host-based and network-based. It's not just like something coming through the firewall is not an event. Somebody logging into a computer is not necessarily an event, but those two things put together, correlated, is maybe a security relevant event, and have people, watching it 24/7 because it's a noisy system. It will give you a lot of data. If you don't have somebody constantly babysitting it and watching it, it won't give you actionable information. Also, train done people not to click on stuff. This is like a key thing. You can have all the greatest security in the world, layers and layers and layers, but people will circumvent it, go around it, whatever, subvert it. But we found out with continuous phishing training, like make them watch a video and then continuously phish them, and if they click on something, take them to some remedial training so they don't do that anymore. We can get that from about a 25% click rate down to about a 1% click rate within a year. Secure gateway, maybe just strip all script attachments. That's a little draconian also. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, or if you use Office 365, they will go ahead and take all the attachments and run them in the sandbox and try to figure out if they're actually malicious or not. You could enforce something like that.
That's something we haven't looked at. Office 365 and Azure, what does it do for Windows script host script execution? Does it care? Does it allow it? That'll be my next talk. Oh, and if you want to try to recover your shadow backup file, remove Shadow Explorer, photo record might give you some chance of that.
So basically, it's a process at this point. You have to keep on it. You have to keep doing the backups regularly. You have to keep training people regularly. Also on there, don't run as root if you can. There's both these privileges, right?
Good point. All right, so to summarize today's talk, new ransomware trend, 100% JavaScript. It's unique because all the code is in line. It's very hard for antivirus to stop it because it likes Windows script host. It's easy to obfuscate and polymorph. There's also readily available encryption functions, and it's bad stuff. And we think it also potentially portable to other operating systems.
I haven't seen it yet, but I think the next variant of this is going to be something that has local root exploits that come with it, and it's going to invoke those, so you don't have to be administrator to get privilege.
Any questions? Has anybody seen this out there yet? A couple of people? Yes, sir.
I was just curious, when you say portable to other OSs, are there similar things in Macs, for instance, that natively run .js files?
Not that I've seen. I mean, you could install Node.js on Mac, right? Just like you can install it on Xbox or even a Windows box. So basically, any sort of JavaScript interpreter.
But you'd have to kind of pretty much really want that before
Yeah, you have to.
expose yourself to this.
Yeah, you'd have to install it yourself.
What's the JavaScript interpreter for Linux? Standard?
No, there isn't one. I mean, there's a standard thing on all Linux would be like shell, right? So you do it that way. But
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Did you run a static code analysis on the blob of code and you could tell you what code was not reachable and throw some of it away?
yeah, I mean, you could do it if you got to decrypt it, and then you would have to put it back to actual code instead of the letters that it uses. And then trace it down, maybe you see, oh, it's calling this crypto library, oh, it's calling this file open and rename. Why is it doing that, right? So you could kind of sandbox it that way, or identify it that way.
Set up some heuristics maybe of things, bad behavior to watch for.
Yeah.
But I mean, the things it's doing aren't necessarily bad things. Calling a crypto function, opening a file, and those things aren't necessarily bad, heuristically speaking.
It could warn you though. It could say like, this thing is opening a file on a crypto function. This behavior is going to catch you into ransomware. Do you want to continue? So if you have some sort of like sandboxing thing that can do that, you could do that.
Yes, sir.
How long does it take for it to actually encrypt all the files? For instance, during the demo, it didn't seem like it was going too terribly fast.
Different variants have different timers set up. Like sometimes they just stay stealth a little bit. Other ones immediately start going to work. This one, as you saw, it opened up a fake document. The document was saying, this is a corrupt document, it's not encoded correctly. I don't know why they did that, to be honest. It was maybe just to throw you off the trail. But that one actually, I've been letting go running a VM for a few days, and I only saw 3 files get encrypted. And I put a bunch of fake files in there to make it do what it was supposed to do, and I didn't see it do much. It might just be the version I have is neutered, right? It's a proof of concept one. It's not the actual one. It's not like one of the ones we got out in the wild. This is a proof of concept one I pulled off of somebody else.
I heard it can encrypt your backup drives in cases where you're not cloud storage.
Sorry, can you?
I heard that in some cases when we're out to the cloud storage, encrypting drives on the cloud storage.
Yeah, not this one in particular, but I've seen some crypto locker variants which will encrypt all NSD drives, not just mapped drives, right? All storage. There aren't variants that will do that. Pretty awful, man. So I think, long and short of it, the solution, the new normal is you're probably already infected, you just don't know it, and you need to be watching all the time. Right? Because there's really, tell me a really effective countermeasure that we said here. I can't think of any that are, they'll become kind of unlivable.
Right, you'll have to bake the static analysis into the antivirus. I mean, I've seen a couple of them do this sort of thing, but with web page JavaScript, it'll say, "Oh, there's a weird redirect here," popping up a warning or something like that. But then now they have to actually look at JavaScript being executed on a machine outside of the browser.
Yes, sir.
I was going to say, back when the I Love You virus and everything was popular, they were usually running on Visual Basic scripts, and we now have antivirus there to deal with that. Do you think in the relatively near future, antivirus will be able to deal with this JScript as the virus?
Yeah, they'll have to come up with new things that will execute in real time as scripts are interpreted and line by line executed. That's the only way. I think of that as probably being heavy.
They'll have to go for the behavioral model, right? They won't, because of the way
Your system will script slow down to a crawl.
Yeah, that
line by line execution and prevention.
Because how they have all these extra no-op functions in there? Well, so if you try to take a signature of that, all they'll do is remove some of the no-ops and then your signature changes, and that's not even, that doesn't even take more than, half a minute or something to do that. So, yeah, it's going to have to be behavioral. It's going to have to be static analysis. It's going to actually even probably, if they can go beyond that by downloading a second stage, then it'll definitely have to be behavioral. So your system will be slower.
Because AIDS, that could be like some kind of flow, right?
Yeah. It's just,
Any other questions? All right. Really appreciate it. Have a nice rest of the time and afternoon. Cheers.